Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and today we have a big set of changes coming in that have just been announced with patch 9.2.5 to Mythic Sepulcher, the first ones. I just want to quickly get this video out to discuss them and to maybe give some context for how much easier this is going to make each of the nerfed encounters in that raid. As patch 9.2.5 unlocks cross-server Mythic Sepulcher, as we move into later months of the tier, the team wants to continue to smooth out pain points for both progression and repeat kills on several bosses in the zone. I really appreciate this. I think in particular, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I'm on repeat kills, not progression, but I like it when bosses are not a pain to re-kill, and so I like that a lot. But it is worth noting as well that progression this tier has been uniquely hard. This has been the highest pull count raid in ages, and it is a big strain for a lot of guilds. Including this round of changes, we made quite a few adjustments to Sepulcher in recent weeks. Wanted to share a bit more context around our goals. We've heard extensive feedback that running Sepulcher, a number of mechanics feel too unforgiving, and there are just too many places where a single error by a single player can cause an unrecoverable wipe. We agree, and several of our recent changes have been aimed at reducing those penalties. And this is a big problem for a lot of guilds that feel like, we've got... it can feel like you don't have a lot of agency if one person in your raid can wipe you. Like, obviously, everybody in the raid, if they play well, you can kill the boss, but sometimes it feels like, you're just waiting for the other people in the raid to stop making mistakes, right? And you're kind of, once you're not making those mistakes anymore, it can be, especially in guilds where there's a big disparity between player skill, between the best and the worst players, this sort of raid can be particularly frustrating when that's true. Major discussion as we plan Dragonflight raid encounters and focus on delivering satisfying progression experience for players on all raid difficulties. I will say, I actually think that having raids released like that on Mythic difficulty is fine, but I think nerfing it over time and potentially delivering bigger nerfs to Sepulcher sooner, especially, I think Halandris maybe was sufficiently nerfed, or potentially even nerfed a little bit more than it needed to be recently, but every other boss that was hard in that raid, I think, could have used nerfs maybe a month after the patch came out, 2 months after the raid came out, like those times, I think. But either way, I think this is a good set of things to do as well. So Zymox Decipher Relic cast time increased to 30 seconds, was 25, so that's 5 more seconds to do the platforms. And that will actually reduce a lot of wipes, especially on re-kills. My guild... Actually, we've one-shot Zymox the last 2 weeks on re-clear. But prior to that, we wiped to it double digits of times on several of our re-kills, which is impressive because we killed it on progression in a single-digit number of pulls. But yeah, this was a big part of the problem, was we were just somehow imbalance our splits, or like we would push a little bit faster, which meant cooldowns weren't available on the platform, which meant the Decipher Relic cast would go off. So yeah, big improvement for re-kills. Not a huge deal, I think, for progression. For the most part, I mean, it does make it a little easier. Pantheon, imprinted safeguards reduce damage and healing taken by 35%, was 50. This is the shields that the seeds and the ritualists get that you have to bring the Night Hunter lines through. And it was already possible to brute force it if you missed a couple of them, which my guild has frequently done on re-kills, but making it reduced by 35 instead of 50 will make it a lot less punishing. Yeah, if you only hit like 2 ritualists, you just have to say, okay, a couple more people go damage those other 2. And same with the seeds. So a nice change as well to Prototype Pantheon for re-kills. Shouldn't affect progression on that boss too much, because realistically on progression you probably do still need to be hitting all of them to progress in most cases. Although maybe in some guilds you have the throughput, but you just don't have the mechanics, and so it'll be a little bit nicer. Lehuvim health nerf and schematics health reduction. This health nerf is a little bit less of a big deal, but the schematic health reduction will be big for consistency of actually killing your schematics, and potentially not needing as many cooldowns to be deployed in that phase. Halandris, Ephemeral Eruption initial damage reduced significantly on Mythic difficulty. I think Ephemeral Eruption, if I'm not mistaken, is the swirlies that leads to the moats spawning. Ephemeral Eruption. Halandris reclaims an orb of ephemera. Oh, this is actually when the orb connects with him. Reduced significantly. So maybe an orb can actually hit Halandris and it won't wipe you. Okay. And it puts a big dot on you as well. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty funny that it does 600k, and then it also still puts a dot on you. It's like, ah, yeah, you are very dead. But, okay, so I guess if this is, if this gets reduced to like 60k or 40k or something, I mean, the dot is still really nasty, right? 15k per second for, but maybe if they nerf the upfront damage and the dot is still really nasty, maybe you can still like limp over the finish line if it happens in P3. But otherwise, yeah, this is probably still going to be a wipe as long as this dot is 15k DPS per player for 24 seconds. But who knows? Light Shatter Beam increases damage taken from Light Shatter Beam by 300% on heroic difficulty, was 500. This is the tank mechanic, so just if you screw up the tank taunt swaps on heroic, it'll be a little bit less likely to kill you. You'll need a little bit less defensives to live it. Anduin, another health nerf coming in here. Mantra Soul nerf. Anduin's Despair nerf. The Hope movement speed has been reduced, so the downstairs phase is getting quite a bit easier here. The intermission's getting easier, although actually not by that much, but still easier. Remorse's winter damage, that's also the intermission. Hope Breaker, that's, I think the phase 3 version is called Empowered Hope Breaker, so I assume this is only in phase 1, phase 2. And Fiendish Soul's Necrotic Claws cooldown has been increased, so that's the intermission jumping ad. So a pretty big set of nerfs to Anduin as well here. It still doesn't really reduce the part about Anduin of one player screwing up is going to lead to an unrecoverable wipe. You know, if you fail to kick an ad, if you fail to stun the Lost Souls, you're still going to wipe on this encounter. But it'll feel a little bit more forgiving to be a little bit inefficient with your damage. It'll feel a little bit more forgiving to, like, you'll get done with the downstairs phase sooner, so you'll be able to send people upstairs more quickly. It'll be a little bit less common that you'll make it to an intermission at less than 100 willpower, but yeah, then the intermission is getting a little bit easier as well. But I would say this fight's still going to retain a lot of the one-shot if you screw up nature of it. Lords of Dread, health nerfs to Mal'Ganis and Contessa. Yeah, again, most guilds that can reach Lords of Dread on Mythic tends to not find the damage check to be particularly dangerous. The Swarm damage reduced by 7.5% on all difficulties. This is something that is lethal on Mythic. Ravenous Hunger now heals the I think that's supposed to be Incohate. I think this is a typo. Shadow for 13% on Mythic difficulty was 10%. So this actually means it'll do less cast before it heals up. This is indeed a nerf, not a buff. And yeah, means that a little bit less raid damage comes out. It is, I guess, slightly a buff to the fight if you then fail to kick it once you're actually trying to damage it, but don't do that. That is very bad. The Carrion Cloud no longer disorients when jumping between players on Mythic. This is actually pretty big. It will make it a lot less punishing to get an extra cloud, to spread it accidentally, those kinds of things. And the Among Us phase has been increased by 10 seconds, so you will not... You have a little bit longer to solve it, although ideally you have a strategy that doesn't run into the time limit here on Mythic, but if you do, then yeah, this will help. Collapsing Quasar Field duration increased by 50% on Mythic difficulty. This is the puddle that you have to walk into if you get Dark Eclipse, I believe, which makes it a lot easier to... Like, they already actually, I think, bumped the duration on this by a little bit of time, but this is a big bump that will make it a lot less common that those expire on the ground without being used. However, you are still going to wipe a lot if somebody without Dark Eclipse touches one. So I mean, it's still... I would say it doesn't necessarily one-shot the raid. I think one thing, if they do want to nerf Raglan more so that it's less punishing, is they could just nerf the damage of Dark Eclipse exploding by like 30%, and then it will be survivable normally and like somewhat safe even with like a rally. Right now, my guild, we've hit rally when that's accidentally happened, and like 19 of us have lived, but it's been very sketch and we all needed to be topped going into it. But you could make it like a little bit safer even, and then we would get to a point where it's like, yeah, it's still really bad to let Dark Eclipses go off, but maybe you can live it. Jailer, Rune of Compulsions, absorb reduced by 10% on Mythic difficulty and more on the lower difficulties, so slight nerf to breaking out the MCs in P2. Misery no longer knocks back on... what even is Misery? Oh, that's the last phase of the Tank Slam, I think, in P1. But it still will on Mythic. Okay. Decimator no longer knocks back on Raid Finder and Normal. Diverted Life Shield no longer heals on Mythic difficulty. And Phase 4 is now triggered at 15% health on Mythic difficulty. So this is going to do two things. This there were some enterprising guilds that found a way to make this already happen and have phase 4 trigger at 11 or 10% and heal it up to 11 and then keep it 11 instead of healing all the way up to 19. Some clever entrepreneurs of Mythic raiding that were doing that, and it was never reliable, but it was also never reliably fixed. So it was inconsistent, but it was doable, and I think it's good to fix this because a lot of guilds are kind of at this point where in progression where it's like, yeah, if we get the bug, we will instantly kill that boss, but otherwise, it might be 20 or 30 more pulls for us to have it die. So they remove the possibility of that bug by mattering, by getting rid of the heal. It is a nerf to phase 4 in the unbugged case because it's now 15% health instead of 19, but it is a slight. You have to do slightly more damage if you did than if you were a guild that, for instance, did do that to actually kill the boss. And then finally, World Crusher produces 2 less Bloods of Azeroth, and World Shatterer produces 1 less Blood of Azeroth. Now, let's see if we can look in the old to figure out which ones these are. Abilities. Mythic. World Crusher is P1, it looks like. So P1, you're only going to have 4 Bloods instead of 6. So that'll be a lot easier, and that'll also mean that you can... Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you'll have less healing to do in P1. I assume that the amount of damage that Azeroth's going to be take is going to be reduced proportionally to this as well. And then World Shatterer. World Shatterer is the start of P3. Okay, so P3 and P1 will both have less Bloods. This will be interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is going to mean a change in strategy for these phases for guilds that are doing them. And it'll be kind of relevant which Bloods no longer spawn as well, because there is kind of a standard movement pioneered by Echo that most guilds that kill this boss do. And so depending on which Bloods they have removed, that may actually throw a bit of a wrench into the plans of like who's healing where. But I don't know, worst case, it's definitely worth it to not have to deal with a Blood, even though you give up on a bit of a damage buff. It does make the fight a lot easier for that mechanic to just go away, and you can still get your 6 stack with your Lust or whatever, or your 6 stack at the start of P3 and the 3 stack right before P4 if you want. Like, those will still be possible to engineer, but depending on which Bloods they remove, you may have to adjust your positioning to make that happen. So we'll see where those are and what effects that has on the metagame of it. I suspect this will be the least impactful nerf of these. I think that the big one, is the P4 change, making that last 4. Like, there's a lot of guilds that wipe sub 4% when they actually had diverted life shield heal. So that'll be big for guilds converting that kill, and it'll also go a long way towards making guilds feel like they're not playing lottery of whenever we get this bug, we'll kill it. All right, so that's the changes to Sepulcher. Pretty interesting. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about the nerfs and stuff. And just I guess Sepulcher raid difficulty in general, because obviously I have one perspective, and I know a lot of I've talked to a lot of other people in a lot of different guilds, so I try and have a pretty good understanding of how different types of people are playing, but obviously the more perspectives the better. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.